Yeah, now you have to really watch what you say.
All right.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Eric Friedman. I am the executive.
Started. Oh, that means we're recording. Okay.
Yeah, so now you have to really watch what you say. Wait, why?
All right.
Well, now what's
welcome
going on
everyone.
here?
My name is Eric Friedman. I am the executive. Started.
I know what the problem is.
Yeah, so now you have to really watch what you say. All right.
Stop the recording and start over.
No, I'm all good now. Don't worry, we got this. All right. I had the YouTube thing going as well. Well, my name is Eric Friedman. I'd like to welcome you here. I'm the Executive Director of the Mad River Valley Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to thank you for joining us for the Chamber's latest edition of our Community Conversation series. Please note that if the Zoom meeting does fill up, you can consider watching the live stream on the YouTube channel. There's a link in the chat. There's a limit to 100 people. We're in pretty good shape right now. If we get close, I'll let you know. These public conversations are designed as a way for our business community to engage with residents, second homeowners, and our visitors. It's brought to you by our 175 member businesses, including our Ski Patrol level benefactors, Sugar Perch Resort, and Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom. Tonight's program is also sponsored by Farrell's Distributing, a valued chamber member who has been providing premium beverages to the Mad River Valley community for over 80 years. This evening's conversation is going to be focused on the Mad River Valley's restaurant community. Our panel will discuss how this sector of our economy has responded to the pandemic crisis, how they're striving to meet the needs of our residents and visitors, and what the future holds. We've received some excellent questions from the community, and I invite you to post any others you'd like in the Zoom chat function as we go along. And I'll do my best to make sure that we can answer them to the best of our ability. I would like to first introduce our panel this evening. Anna Dan is the owner of the Hyde Away and Sage restaurant, and she's here to represent the quote unquote traditional restaurants here in the Mad River Valley, and is also the chair of the Mad River Valley Chamber Board. Charlie Menard is here as well. He's an amazingly creative owner of the Canteen Creemee, and he's here representing the takeout sector of our local restaurant world. And he is also a real valued Mad River Valley Chamber member. Jenna Rossbach is the co-founder of Waitstaff on Wheels, a new meal delivery service that was founded pretty recently. She's a longtime server at various local restaurants, and she's here to represent impacted restaurant workers. Ryan Chaffin is here as well. He's the Director of Marketing and Business Development from Farrell Distributing. We've asked him to participate to give a broader industry-wide perspective. Kim Donahue is the owner of the iconic Inn at the Round Barn Farm and is the Mad River Valley Chamber, is also a Mad River Valley Chamber board member. Normally, she's focused on the Valley's critical wedding industry, arguably the sector most impacted by the pandemic crisis. Of late, she's been an absolute rock star on the statewide lobbying front, and she and her team have been forced to flex the business to survive. And I hopefully she can talk more about that. Jason Merrill, who I'm not sure is here tonight, is supposed to be as the co-owner of the Worthy Burger, which has 3 outlets in Vermont located in Woodstock, South Royalton, as well as here in Waitsfield. Jason is a valued Mad River Valley Chamber member and will give us a broader perspective to the impacts of the crisis. I'd like to start off by giving each of the panelists a minute or two to give a brief account of how the pandemic crisis has impacted their business and their staff. So let's go to Anna. You want to start off and kick things off?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Anna Dan, and this is Paul Weber. He is co-owner of Hyde Away and Sage with me, although you probably see my face there a little more. And I'm sorry, what are we opening with? Just who we are?
Yeah, who you are and how the crisis has impacted your business and your staff.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I'm focused now. So from the very beginning, we have operated through the crisis at Hyde Away. We could not see the volume to keep Sage open the whole way. So Sage was closed from last March when we first started, and reopened this December with coming on of the new ski season. So obviously very impacted in volume, but thankfully we have some really loyal customers, and we've been able to do takeout in the beginning and then open up with that outdoor tent for the summer, which we had a fabulous summer. I think everyone did, given, the situation. And now back to indoor dining. So we've had we lost almost a week to 2 weeks due to COVID issues while we've been operating in the last year, but we've been very thankful to be able to operate.
Thanks, Anna. Next up is going to be, how about you, Jenna? You want to tell us a little about what you're up to with the Waitstaff on Wheels?
Sure. So Waitstaff on Wheels is basically just a response to the pandemic. Most restaurants have gone to a takeout only format or limited dine-in. So there are a lot more takeout options available in the Valley. And we are a group of former servers, former waitstaff who are not employed right now. We're employed about half as much as we would like to be. And we are just basically offering a delivery service similar to Grubhub or Uber Eats, where you can get delivery from now 7 Mad River Valley restaurants right to your door. We are both supporting the restaurant community in enabling them to do delivery without needing to employ somebody just to do that. And we're also supporting the community in receiving the takeout, for people who are quarantining or who otherwise just don't want to come down into town. So really we are a response, and so far we've only been going for about a month now, but things are picking up and looking good. And especially since we finally have some snow for the ski areas, I think a lot of the people who are coming into town to ski are taking advantage of our services, which is great.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jenna. Next up is Charlie Menard from Canteen Creemee. Charlie, how's it been for you?
Hi, yeah, Charlie Menard, Canteen Creemee. So, yeah, it's been good, actually. I've been kind of fortunate in that, I hire a lot of young people, and they didn't travel as much this summer. So I was actually really lucky that I had a lot of people who are available to work that normally, need every other weekend to go to the Cape. That was one good thing. But now, I find that now that we're doing all of our sales online, one of the big things for me has been, I've needed to maybe up my staffing just a little bit so that I can reach that 5:30 pickup. That 5:30 number is so much more real than it's ever been before. And it's kind of impacted us a little bit, but and keeping up with the online system has proven to be very tricky. But other than that, yeah, I feel very.
Yeah, well, thanks, Charlie. I think, you've been uniquely set up for a pandemic, but, not necessarily on purpose, but, you're fortunate in that way, which was good. Next up in our panel is Ryan Chaffin. He's the Director of Marketing for Business and Development at Farrell Distributing. How you doing, Ryan?
Hey, Eric, thanks for having me. So we're a statewide beer, wine, and non-alcoholic distributor. The first one after Prohibition. We've been around that long, same family.
Not you, though.
Not me personally, no. David's great-grandfather was a produce distributor before Prohibition. So after the law changed, the state approached him and said, you know how to get around a little bit. What would you think about getting into the beer business? So we've been around for quite some time. And the Mad River Valley is a really important home for a lot of us. And myself personally, I started working in the beer business 20 years ago for the Longshore Brewing Company back then. And the owner specifically told me, make sure you get to the Mad River Valley first thing you do and get around and say hello to everybody. So it's a really important part of our business. Speaking of business, for us, obviously, when the shutdowns happened, we lost half our account base overnight, immediately with no warning. So right in the middle of ski season, right on St. Patrick's Day, the day that we were gearing up and building up inventory, which for us takes at times 3 months to 6 months to gear up our forecasting to be ready to serve the needs of a lot of people on this call. So we found ourselves at the end of March with close to 100,000 gallons of beer that had to get destroyed. So working through that on top of working with all of our winery partners all over the world to adjust orders. We were also dealing with a tax that was happening across the country in France and Italy, which was challenging. And staff, we have 300 employees that live from all corners of the state and a few in the Valley. So between losing half the account base and then having to make sure 300 people were safe and comfortable, having a lot of open dialogue because we never stopped. We were in stores and grocery stores, and we were in a lot of your establishments, making sure you were okay. So quite the ride. We're still in it, and we're going to be in it for quite some time, but I'm very thankful for our organization. And it's taught us a few things, and we've had some considerations to make, but we're here, we're strong, and everyone's still employed, and we're still representing our portfolio, which at this point is now 40 Vermont brands that we represent across the category. So when you think about representing a lot of national brands and imported brands, it comes with a lot of pressure. But when you represent that many Vermont companies, it comes with a lot of heartfelt pressure too. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. We really appreciate it, Ryan. Kim Donahue from the Inn at the Round Barn. What's up with you, Kim?
So in March, when we were all forced into hibernation, we flipped immediately into action mode. We knew that many of our neighbors were at risk for food insecurity, and they were either unable or unwilling to be out in public at the market because they were at high risk, or they suddenly had a house full of kids that they were homeschooling, and they were reeling from that daily interruption to their daily life and their daily routine. Or even more importantly, we knew that some of our community was at risk of facing food insecurity due to the economic impact of not being able to work. So we had food. We felt like people needed food. Most of the restaurants were closed in the Valley. Not everybody was able to pivot as quickly as we were, because we did have we had a St. Patrick's Day dinner that was planned. So we really had food. So we immediately implemented a feed for 40 model. We, as a caterer, we are uniquely suited to pumping out a lot of the same food with a very high quality and being able to deliver that. Like Charlie said, some of the impediments to that are needing to have an online ordering system that you can actually navigate or manipulate in some way. Fortunately, we had been doing some farmhouse dinners, and we had initiated a relationship with Square. So thank you to everybody who has been very patient with that system as we all learned how to game those systems, because we've all had to game them if we do takeout, right? So that 4 for 40 model, we offered 4 generous servings of hearty, filling, nutritious food. And we bought some foil containers and some paper bags, and put some stuff in the backseat of my car, and I drove around and delivered food to people who wasn't able to get out. For every 4 meals that you purchased, we donated 1 meal back to the community, and sometimes that went to the community fund, and sometimes it meant that we knew that we had neighbors that were in need of food, and sometimes it meant that we just delivered meals to them. But a very interesting thing happened, and that was our neighbors wanted to help. And more specifically, neighbors wanting to help neighbors, but second homeowners that were coming up who were quarantining, who were being very, very careful, but really wanted to help year-round Mad River Valley residents, wanted a way to help. So we started to offer vouchers. And I will tell you that probably 70% of the vouchers that were sold to second homeowners who wanted to give back to the community. I think about that a lot when I think about conversations about second homeowners. As more restaurants were able to open and fill the pipeline of demand, we were able to flex again, and we offered Salty Jim's Summer Shack, which gave lots of residents and other people the ability to come and picnic on our grounds in a place where they maybe have never had a chance to picnic. And I'm sure that as this continues, and it's going to, we will have to pivot again. The impact has been a nearly 90% reduction of our revenue from March through today. 65 weddings or events have had to cancel or reschedule. So even if Governor Scott says that weddings and events gatherings can happen again, say in May, all of our business through July has already canceled. So I will not be able to have a wedding until August. So there's no recovery in that for me. So I have a lot of lobster rolls that I have to sell in order to pay our property taxes and our utilities and to pay snow removal and insurance and the mortgage, let alone to keep our staff employed. So that's what we've done to pivot to try to survive.
Yeah, and it's great to hear about the, when you start giving some of the numbers about the wedding industry, and I think we all know how important the wedding industry is to our community. And this is just one, obviously, probably the biggest venue, but we have others that are all in the same boat as well. So our final panelist today is Jason Merrill, the co-owner of Worthy Burger. Jason, how's it been for you and your 3 restaurants?
Well, it's been exciting times here. I have 3 different restaurants, one in Woodstock, one in South Royalton, and one in Waitsfield here. And, 3 completely different economic, social people, from second homes to, just run of the earth Vermonters that have been around for hundreds of years. Up in Waitsfield, we were able to close down for a week and get the staff that wanted to stay working and get them, into the to-go game real fast. There was some challenges trying to figure out the best calls, and we don't have online ordering yet, which we should here by the end of February. And then the phone system always being busy and people kind of getting a little cranky about that, but we figured it out. We've got a good system now. South Royalton location, I don't know if anybody's been down there. It's a pretty kind of rustic area. So that building and that place is small enough. We were able to just shut it down completely until July. And when we open in the summer, we have such a huge outdoor space that we were able to really expand that. And we had a very, very good summer there. Woodstock is just a completely different beast. It is just busy all the time. A very, very big tourist town. And we're lucky there. Also, we have a lot of locals, but also all the second homeowners actually came and stayed, and they're still there today. So we have a regular traction of to-go orders on a daily basis from different families that order Wednesday and then some on Thursday and Friday. And we also had that lawn area, and we developed this picnic program. No one's mentioned the alcohol to go, but that's been great for our restaurants. We've been able to do a lot of different cocktails and lots of packaged beer. The hardest part about really one of those things when we were able to go back inside was, my restaurants are mostly draft. We've got 30 lines in Woodstock, 20 in South Royalton, and 12 in Waitsfield. And as Ryan can attest, there's not many breweries kegging beer right now. Everybody switched to cans. Lawson's has been good. I have to beg for kegs. TJ says yes. And Ryan and, those guys are getting, and I went strict, like we're going only Vermont. We're only supporting Vermont. I did have some out-of-state kegs that I blew out, but mostly our draft is all Vermont. So we're trying to keep our money that we're spending within the state to help get the circle going back. So that's really kind of what we're doing. We have core staff. We are employing. Not all of our staff is back. Some aren't coming back. Some choose not to. Some we really want to. Some that's fine, but it's just kind of how it is. So we're just kind of plugging away. Ski season's been good, and Columbus Day was our busiest weekend we've had ever in Woodstock. So during a pandemic. So I can't complain. Our doors are still open.
Well, thanks a lot, Jason. I appreciate getting your perspective on this. You talked about, how different it is, in Woodstock and here. I'd be interested in hearing from Ryan Chaffin, just, how do you see the Valley as opposed to other regions in the state? And what are the differences that you see?
Well, there are definitely some differences across the state. There's no question. I'm kind of calling it the tale of two states. I think from, as Jason mentioned, from the Woodstock corridor, Route 4 south and north is how I kind of look at it. And when I looked at our entire year, hospitality on-premise losses in 2020, the majority, the higher losses were in northern Vermont, Chittenden counties, Lamoille counties, and in this area right here specifically. The day traffic in southern Vermont is really strong. A lot of folks are coming up and coming back on the same day, and I'm not going to get into the quarantine issue because I don't know, but traffic down south is just, there's a lot more folks happening in the south, and Kim mentioned second homeowners. The second homeowner business in southern Vermont is really strong. A lot of folks moved up here and they still haven't left. You can see it in the number of people that have been moving here, but I would say it's hard for me to pinpoint directly to compare the Valley versus the entire state, but I would say that if I would probably say the Valley is probably feeling it a little harder than others, to be quite honest.
One of the things I'm curious to hear from to Jenna a little bit. I think these businesses have been taking it on the chin in a lot of ways, and as my position here at the chamber, I'm certainly seeing it. Jenna, can you speak to a little bit more about how this has impacted the staff, the restaurant workers here in the Valley?
Sure. I mean, I guess first off, as a waitress, I was employed through the summer, and as soon as dining came indoors, I didn't feel comfortable doing that really anymore. It's a real risk, and whereas frontline as somebody who works at a grocery store or any of those sort of frontline people, and I think giving an option to still provide a service. Everybody that's working with Waitstaff on Wheels loves being in the service industry. We love our customers. But we just were feeling a little, pressed as far as safety goes. There's a lot in place to ensure our safety. But, not everybody's always consistently following the rules when they go out. So, I think that it's a nice option to be able to be doing delivery. And then, we also didn't want to take anything away from the restaurants. So basically, nothing changes between the customer and the restaurant if they add a delivery service. They are still, a lot of the bigger companies like Uber Eats and such will take a percentage of the sale from the restaurant. And that's just not feasible right now. Restaurants are already really pressed to make ends meet at 50% capacity, or with just doing takeout. So our model was to not change anything with the relationship between the customer and the restaurant. They're still ordering and paying the full price at the restaurant, and then our delivery service is an add-on. So that is, I think, pretty attractive to the restaurants that we're working with. They basically don't have to change anything or do anything differently than they were already doing. And our drivers are psyched to be able to continue to work and not feel like they need to be in a building with people from, whose backgrounds they can't track, If anyone's been out to a restaurant recently, when you walk in the door, you need to give your name and basically sign off that you haven't been out of the state for the past 2 weeks and that you're feeling healthy. But, it's easy to just say, yeah, and let me in for dinner. So I think, I think it's just one more level of protection for those of us in the service industry to be able to be offering delivery.
Thanks, Jenna. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, it's really interesting to hear your perspective from a staff, from the staff as opposed to from a business perspective. And then the whole idea of being safe and you feeling safe as opposed to the customers. And I think that's something that's really important that is kept in mind. I'm curious, maybe Anna, what has the experience been like for your staff? And your experience. The other thing one of the questions I've gotten is, what has the experience been like dealing with the state health apparatus when an employee has been infected or exposed, and how you have to deal with that? Can you speak to that a little bit, Anna? Because I know this is something, it's not just, several restaurants in town have had to deal with this.
Yeah, of course. So obviously we take the safety of all of our staff very seriously. And even though we opened from the very beginning, there were some staff that clearly were just not comfortable to do in the beginning anything, or possibly some of them when we moved to indoor dining. And we definitely respect all of that and work with each individual to make sure that if they are interested in working, there is work for them as much as we have. And if they are cautious and prefer not to, then that they, whenever they're ready, will be ready to have them back, hopefully, and that things turn around. But in terms of dealing with the state, it's interesting because we had two different cases, so two different people from the state contacting us. Jean, who's on the call today, did all of the mapping of exactly who was in the restaurant at what time and on what day and who had contact with whom, so that we can be really thorough about who needed to quarantine and get tested and who was still good to go. And at a point, there were so many connections that we ended up not having the staff to open for a few days. And then as things opened up, we brought people back and were online. The dealing with the state, from what I understand from Jean, was really as individual as the contact tracers, one being very, very involved and thorough, and the other one being less so, and us having to go back and verify things or get things from them. It's a pretty straightforward process. What I found interesting was that as soon as the staff found out that there had been an infection, kind of everybody panicked, and they went and they ran to the testing centers, and when that was not the right process. The right process, they tell you based on when the person was infectious, based on who was working on that particular day, and a lot of other things, what the proper timeline is in terms of waiting, quarantining at home for 7 days, getting tested afterwards. So then people had to go test again because they had done it incorrectly the first time. So there was like a moment of panic before everybody understood the process. But, they did walk us through the process, and we're on the other side of it, thank God now, and being cautious. And I would also like to add that, I am not blaming anybody, but we were always very cautious in the restaurant. The folks that were affected are all 20-somethings that in their own life outside of the restaurant are perhaps not keeping up with the best protocols. So I felt pretty good that it was not, of course, we can't know exactly where it came from, but that I did not think that it was something that was generated from our institution, from our organizations.
Thanks, Anna.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
Can I just chime in with that real fast? Because we actually just went through this at the restaurant. Middle of a week and a half ago, one of our staff's parents was exposed and has COVID. And so as soon as we found out, we shut the doors, and I was up there all day today, scrubbing and cleaning, and we have ionizers running and this and that. All our staff is out tested. And when I talked to the state, because the state called me, we went through the contact tracing, and their view of it was not to talk, reach out to the customers that were in the building that night. They said it was all about anybody that had spent a cumulative time of more than 15 minutes with the potential positive employee, which was basically our staff. And where this certain person works when she was at work was kind of in her own little bubble, just taking to-go orders. So it's not like she's moving around, but they didn't need us to contact all the people that came in that night, which I found was kind of odd. But
Correct. The same for us too, just chiming in. It was 15 minutes or more and it was staff only.
yeah. So, I mean, now we're taking all this contact tracing information for every single person that comes. I don't know about it. I know every other restaurant's got 900 sheets of people's names. But I was a little surprised I didn't have to go a little more in depth to the tracing than I did.
I'm sure you have mixed feelings about that as well.
Yeah, a little bit. I have mixed feelings about everything though. It's okay. I'm sensitive.
I've noticed that about you, Jason. One of the things one of the other questions that we've gotten was, have there been any silver linings to this experience for you and your business? Charlie, anything that's come from this that, has been a positive thing for you and maybe something
positive? I mean, is there anything positive out of this? That was kind of nice. I was able to, scheduling was kind of nice. That's one small thing. Other than that, I mean, I think we're all dealing with stuff on a daily basis constantly. But, I mean, yeah, been very fortunate, to be doing a pretty good business during this. Very, very fortunate, very lucky. I don't know how long that'll last or, whatever, but yeah, silver linings. I don't know. I think we all want this over with.
Yeah, well, I'm sure of that. Does any of the other panelists have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. And we talk about this a lot in the three restaurants is we have been able to pare down and, a lot of our staff didn't come back, and I don't necessarily think it was a bad thing. They didn't really like the restaurant business. They wanted to do something else. They've gone on to different careers. They've explored things they've always wanted to, which is good with our support. The state did do unemployment for a lot of these people, but for our core staff that we've been kept, that's been around this whole time, we've been able to give them raises. We've been able to give them bonuses. And we're running we were running two of the restaurants 4 days a week. So it's compacted all our business down into 4 days rather than running 7 days a week, 2 meal periods a day. We're able to shrink the business down, support our core staff, support our farmers even more. We've tuned our farmers down like we did with the beer, and we're able to, focus a little more and watch each line item a little better. All our electricity is down, our gas is down, the wear and tear in the building's down. We've done some improvements with some of this grant money that we've got. So, trying to look at it like we're able to do these things rather than, 7 days a week, for oddless hours where everybody gets burnt out. Our staff's happy. They get 3 days off a week, and they seem to be quite happy, which is the nice part.
That is a great silver lining. You brought up, the federal funds and coming in from the PPP and the EIDL programs. Kim, I know you're really pretty well tuned into that whole world. We've talked about this a lot since March, and we've been working together on a lot of the lobbying efforts. What has that meant to your business, and how have you felt that it's been for your colleagues?
Well, I'm going to take that silver lining question and start there, because the silver lining for me has been that we have turned competitors into colleagues, and there is a community that has developed who's really just trying to collaborate and look out for each other. I think that Waitstaff on Wheels is one great example of that collaboration. There's a lot of disparate parts that are trying to work together to make something happen that benefits a lot of people. And right out of the gate, there were people like you, Eric, and the Chamber and Vermont Chamber and some other industry groups that banded together to advocate for the needs of the lodging industry and the wedding industry and the restaurant industry. And the civics lesson that has come from all of that has been like, I don't think I could pay for that kind of an education in many, many, many years of school, but it's been amazing to be able to pick up the telephone and call a legislator who is either from Vermont or representing Vermont, and to get a call back, or to invite them to a meeting to listen to the subtleties and the nuances of our issues. But we would not ever have the opportunity to do that in other places. Nuances like we have some new businesses in the Valley and they fell through the cracks when it came time for aid or for grants or for even loans. And by raising that up the flagpole and bringing it to the attention of the ACCD and legislators, we were able to shine a spotlight on it that will hopefully help those people. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of people who have not received any sort of aid. When you have, one great example is the Vermont Association of Wedding Professionals, and that they recognized very early on that while they're made up of a lot of photographers and makeup artists and florists, they rely on restaurants and caterers and lodging venues in order to execute their trade. So if there's no place, if all of the lodging and all of the wedding venues go out of business and all of the restaurants go out of business, there isn't any place to have grandma's 80th birthday party or a wedding or a reunion. So they banded together to really prop up rental businesses. And that's just been something that's been amazing and has taken a lot of time. I mean, man, that doesn't stop. I've started that. There hasn't been a day that we haven't been advocating. So that's been our advocating experience.
Thanks, Kim. Anyone else have any input on the on how the federal programs have worked for your business or not, or maybe what you've heard from other of colleagues about how it's been going for you?
Eric, I'll jump in because we definitely were right out of gate at the first PPP loan because we knew that we wanted to keep people employed. So that was tremendous. We would not have been able to stay open without that first initial PPP loan, and then eventually the Vermont grants started coming through. So the aid, both the federal aid and then what the state of Vermont kicked in, allowed us to keep our fairly sizable staff employed, those that wanted to continue to work, and to stay open, because there are nights when we would be open and we do $200 worth of business out of there, and that on a that doesn't pay for the staff, or doesn't pay for anything really. So it was a tremendous help, and we wouldn't be here right now if that help didn't come through. So thanks for I participated a little bit in the advocacy part and some calls. Thank you for coordinating them. And thank you, Kim, for representing us as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that, when Kim talks about the education that we learned in civics, I'm a history teacher by trade, and I thought I knew this stuff. And I've been with, it was eye-opening to see the impact that lobbying efforts have, and especially in a small state like Vermont. And I think you folks should also, everyone listening, the thing I like to really let people know is the fact that how responsive our legislators really were, and how I felt like not just our legislators, but I think legislators across the state, for the most part, really had the best interests of businesses and the people at heart. They were really trying to do things quickly and have as much impact as possible. Charlie Kimball, who's the representative from down in Woodstock that I know Jason knows pretty well, went out of his way to help us out and to meet on our calls. And he was on the Joint Fiscal Committee, which was, really making a lot of the decisions. But I just want people to be aware of, when I called up our state legislators and our state senator, I sent an email out, and within an hour or so, I was getting responses back, which I don't think that happens in every state. And I was really proud to
Eric,
see that.
Eric, I'll tell you from a statewide perspective, legislators from top to bottom did an amazing job, and the communication back and forth was really at a level in which we're really thankful for. And I think Kim mentioned it. The Wedding Association, the Lodging Association, the Restaurant Association, the state's chambers, the Vermont Chamber, Lake Champlain Chamber, of course, you, Eric, and your group, the rallying that had to happen to get these unified voices. And it's actually amazing when you think about it, that a year ago, that the associations, well, the businesses like the weddings and lodging that the state relies on as an economic driver didn't have a unified voice until the pandemic happened. And it's amazing to think of how fast those things came together, because in other states, there's no way that we would have that much engagement that fast to have a unified voice, as Kim mentioned. And I've seen it from every single town across the state. And I've been a part of a lot of advocacy efforts for all the associations and the businesses that Kim mentioned again, and really proud of that. So you should be proud of it too, because your voice was heard, and it's good stuff.
Absolutely. Anyone else have any input on that subject?
I know that the PPP loans really saved us. Although we shut down Worthy Burger in South Royalton, so we didn't take it there. We actually only took it for Woodstock because one thing we're really worried about is it not being forgiven, which still is out there pending. We don't know if it's going to be forgiven or not. And that's a lot of money that we burn through in payroll. That's a very large staff there. And there's more options for more. So we're kind of hesitant in doing more. We have been able to, break even, I guess, or only lose a little. We don't know what break even is in the restaurant business, but for the last several months, which is nice. But the grants have helped get a lot of the improvements we need, new coolers. And of course, during this time, something obviously breaks. It's a restaurant business. Everything breaks every single day, whether it's a glass or the walk-in. We've been able to get that stuff repaired, which is nice. And the grant money has saved us in that aspect of it. So everybody that did that work was amazing. And I know there's not many Burlington restaurants on this here, but I'm involved with a lot of them up there also. And they feel the same way about all our grants and PPPs that we've gotten and how much people have stepped in and stuff like that for, helping each other's restaurants. Like even the to-go tour social media page and on Facebook is enormous. There's 25,000 members of that, and they all support each of the restaurants up there. And everybody's like, "Oh, we're doing this week and that this week." It's really good to see. And Vermont's a strong little state, so I think we'll be fine.
Jason brings up
homeowners.
Jason brings up a good point with PPP. That is at this point still a loan. So that has to be repaid at this point. We all have to be planning to repay that. So not only are we in a position where there's greatly diminished revenue, we're in a position, and anybody who takes deposits for large events, we had a tremendous amount of money that was returned on those deposits, which really impacts cash flow and many other things. But essentially, the money that we've gotten has helped us pay past debts. It is not helping us look forward yet. We still have to look forward. This PPP was considered on a period in 2020. So from this point forward in 2021, we still need to consider how we're going to build the bridge to get to the other side, to get to normal. So we can't stop. We can't stop the advocacy for any of our industries, especially the restaurant industry, especially lodging and events, because we're not going to return to normal when the spigot is opened, so to speak. There's going to be a long time before these service industries are going to return to normal. And we have to get there in order to be able to repay all of this. So we're not done yet. We're not done yet. We can take a little breather, but we have a long road ahead of us.
Thanks, Kim. You know, one of the questions that came up, this is an interesting question that came up from from someone in the community. And I think this is interesting because I think a lot of us are too close to it, and I think we know it. And the question is, for those of us unfamiliar with the restaurant, lodging, or food service industries in Vermont, what are the state of Vermont requirements under COVID for workspace safety practices in restaurants and our takeout establishment? And has this meant greater training for you and your staff, more operating expenses, you know, assuming face masks and hand sanitizer, signage, time spent, record keeping, et cetera? Was someone on the panel kind of address that? Because I think people don't necessarily know the ins and outs of it like we do.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. You know, we have an opportunity here to market and package our to-go foods and this and that, and make it nice for people to continue to want to do that. Buying masks, I mean, we bought a case of 80 masks for the tune of, you know, $800. You know, that's an expense that we've never had before. Workspace, when you're working on a line, you're not 6 feet apart. You're next to each other. And at our restaurants, we have all wood fire grills. They're hot, you know, and there's smoke. Some of my cooks cannot wear masks. The ones working the grills can't do it. It's just, there's too much heat. Other than that, we make everybody wear masks and distance when they can. Our front of the house staff is pretty well distanced in each location, but the kitchen is really the hard part. And I'm sure Charlie's space isn't as very big, and I'm sure he's struggling with the same thing. Is you cannot space 6 feet apart.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, there's none. But you know, I do believe that a lot of our staff is pretty isolated. You know, and we have a small staff, and you know, we do the best we can with it. Yeah.
So Eric, to answer your question, some of the regulations right now that are the guidelines that are in place by the state is in dining establishments, in dine-in establishments. And Anna, you can correct me, or Anna and Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but multiple households are not able to dine together. So there's when you make a reservation or when you enter a dining establishment, you need to register in a way. You need to leave your name and your phone number for contact tracing or contact information. And then you can only be seated with members of your own household. And then you must wear a mask at any time while you are not eating, and you must wear a mask when you are up from the table. Did I miss anything in restaurants there, Anna? Is that everything?
It was also the contact tracing.
The contact tracing, right. So then in lodging establishments, much like the ski industry, we're the only industry that has been tasked with educating the public as far as what Vermont's quarantine requirements are and what Vermont's travel guidelines are, which are nothing. You can't travel here. You can't leave here. You're stuck here. Anyway, that's not entirely true. We're tasked with explaining the 14-day quarantine period before they arrive. They must arrive in a private vehicle. It could be a plane, a train, or an automobile, as long as they're the only ones on it. That's how they have to get here. If they are unable to do that, they can also quarantine in their home state for 7 days and then have a negative test, quarantine until they arrive in Vermont. Or they can quarantine in a Vermont lodging establishment for 14 days. So they can come to a Vermont lodging establishment, stay in their room for 14 days and never leave the building, and then go home. And many states have quarantine requirements when they get there. We are also forced, along with the ski industry, to ask our guests to provide an attestation to that effect. So we must get a signature that says that the guest understands that and that they are able to abide by that. So essentially, very few people can come to Vermont that are able to follow those quarantine regulations. And when they get here, there are the further requirements that they are unable to congregate with additional households. The requirements for opening your business in April and May and June, when the ACCD started to roll out the guidelines, when the governor started to open that spigot, much like every other business, we were each tasked with coming up with our own reopening plan that met the guidelines for our industry, which are basically the guidelines for all of our industries, which are social distancing up to 6 feet, which include PPE, protective equipment, meaning masks, hand sanitizer. And man, I have a refrigerator full of hand sanitizer if anybody needs any, because that was a big purchase there. And then there's also requirements like we cannot have communal lunch rooms. We can't share meals with people. We're forced also to try to do as much of our work as we can remotely. For us, sometimes it means staggering shifts so that our sous chef is not working at the same time in the same kitchen as our chef. It also means that when we're packing, because we need additional space to pack for takeout, we're using spaces that had never been used for food service before that would normally be space that would generate income. So our milking parlor is now essentially being used as a packing area because we can't do that in the confines of the kitchen. So those are some of the guidelines that we are having to navigate.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's something that people don't necessarily realize what's involved, and there is a lot. And I think that one of the things that that the chamber's been trying to do is getting the various sectors to just communicate with one another and talk about best practices and just try to help each other out as much as possible.
Eric, can I say something about the customers coming into the restaurant?
Absolutely.
So we have spaced out seating, pods, that type of stuff in our restaurants. As for people coming in with multi-households, they just say they're all from the same household. We don't see anybody over 8 in the same group. So we take reservations at 2 of the restaurants. So if there's 12 people, they'll make 2 different reservations and ask to sit next to each other and just talk around all our barriers. So to police that as an owner or a host or a manager is a really difficult thing to do. We have to trust the guests that are doing that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things that there's certainly the people in the lodging sector are dealing with that more than anyone, and it's a really tough situation to put business owners in when your natural inclination is to be hospitable, not question, and it's a tough thing. So I appreciate that, and there's only so much you can do, right? As tough as that might be, one of the questions is a really good one, and I think I know the answer to a lot of this is, how supportive has the local community been to your business throughout this pandemic? Anyone want to take that one on?
I can start and say that people have been very supportive. People have come to do takeout, and those that were comfortable have come back to see us. And so I'm very thankful, and I feel that we've been supported well.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I
We
agree.
feel,
All of our locals have been supportive. I mean, I had lunch at Charlie's place on my way back today in the car. It was delicious as usual. Last week I had Stoke. So we have regulars that come in first name basis with a lot of to-go people. Like Ben orders 2 sandwiches and 2 rum punches to go twice a week. I know he's going to do it. And Ryan comes in, so we have our local support, which is really nice. And I think a lot of the other businesses are supporting each other in this. I know Lawson's goes all over the place. I've been in the Hyde Away several times, so I think it's kind of brought us all in a little bit closer and a little more supportive of each other.
if it weren't for the locals, we certainly wouldn't be doing the takeout business that we're doing. We're off the beaten path and we have no foot traffic to speak of, and no natural traffic. But we have heard those residents say that, they sit, or certainly in the midst of the height of it all, they would sit and they would map out who they were going to support. They had a list of the businesses that they were going to support, and they planned out their purchases and they planned out their meals, whether it was on a 1-week basis or a 2-week basis. We've also been very, very grateful that, we're talking to people about weddings in 2022 and 2023. And unbelievably, it's been locals who have been recommending us and suggesting to their family and friends who don't live here that they should come and get married here, that they should come and have their events here, that they should come and support this place. And, we hear it from their lips. We see it every single week. We see our people who are ordering and what they're ordering. And like Jason said, it's like, some of it's like clockwork and some of it's surprising, but it's all immensely, we're all immensely grateful for it. So huge amount of gratitude.
Well, I'm sure you will all appreciate this, although there is no other Mad River Valley across the entire state. There are a lot of great communities and towns, and I can tell you that if you took some really key towns throughout the state and you put a bunch of business owners like this together, you'd hear the same thing. And this is happening across the entire state. It's happening from the Newport line down to the Bennington line. So it's really inspiring to hear that. And I've heard this from a few other towns, how the locals have been coming out in droves to support each other's businesses. So I can tell you you're not alone. And there are a lot of other communities like this across the state that are doing this for each other. So know that you're in good company.
Absolutely. Charlie, are you feeling the love?
What, from you?
Well, you always feel the love from me, Charlie.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I'd like to go back just a little bit and talk about something that, someone told me something that happened this past weekend, talking about people coming into the valley and how there was a call, I guess, a carbon monoxide call to a Airbnb. And when they arrived there was 3 cars from 3 different states at that one Airbnb, and, it's like, they probably all go everywhere together and say, yeah, we're from the same house. But yeah. And can you talk a little bit about new people that have moved into the valley over this time?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure, Charlie. I mean, that's one of the biggest calls that we get here at the chamber, and people walking in and, they're new to the community. They bought a house here. They're talking to realtors. It's amazing. And it's really a great thing in a lot of ways. I mean, I think that, our schools were hemorrhaging kids, and now all of a sudden we're not. And I think people are realizing that they can live here. And I think one of the really fortunate things, the number one question that we get is broadband access. And and what's it like? And they're blown away when I tell them about, Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom, and they're like, oh, what's that? oh, you mean I don't have to deal with, Verizon or one of these other big companies? And for a little town, we're really, really fortunate. It's not, I know it's not everybody and it's not the entire valley, but for the most part, we have really, really good service here, and better than most places and better than big cities. And people are really blown away by that. So it's enabling us to really diversify our economy, which is really important. We having, like I said, more kids in our schools, more people doing remote work here. And I think it makes for a vibrant community, which is great. Unfortunately, that comes with downsides too, and increased property costs, and the housing costs are going up, and affordability was always an issue here, like it is in a lot of places. And I skied up in Stowe today. I shouldn't probably admit that, but I did. And you can see it's the same issues there. I think they're even worse. But I think that there's a lot of opportunities for us, but sure as hell, a lot of people moving in here, and not necessarily a bad thing. I hear they like fried chicken, Charlie.
Tell them, please.
Right? Does anyone else have anything they want to add? I guess the last question that when I thought this might be a good way to end things, was, as I'm going to find it here. What alterations to your business model that you've been forced to make are things that ended up being good ideas that that will remain long after this crisis is over?
Hey, I'll jump in again. So I put a table out in front of my order window to keep people away from, because, we wanted to distance, we wanted, them to stay as far away as we could. So we put a table in front of the order window just to create space. And so I put t-shirts on there. I sold a lot of t-shirts this summer. All of a sudden I was in the t-shirt business. So that's another silver lining.
There you go.
So, I learned something that maybe will carry on in the future.
Yeah.
I liked our tent. We had the tent back for outdoor dining, and we really thought about, is this something that we should just do every summer? Because that whole idea of eating out in the garden is a good one, and the tent is something that might come back. We'll see.
That's great to hear. We certainly hear a lot of people liking that. So
Yeah, I ate in that tent over the summer. I thought it was delicious. I like sitting out there. The expansion of the patio is definitely a good thing for the restaurants. And down in Woodstock, we have this huge lawn area that before all this was happening, actually last summer, my partner and I Kurt were thinking about, wrecking it and putting in an extra parking lot, because we always run into parking issues in Woodstock. Well, obviously we wouldn't, it got shut down, so we're not going to spend the $37,000 to do that. So we're like, all right. So we bought 6 picnic tables, leveled them out, put them over there. We put music over there. We had a portable bar. It was great. We're going to do that every summer. Town loved it. All the tenants loved it. It was, liquor inspector didn't care. So these expansions, we expanded our patio at the Waitstaff, got that bigger. The landlords are like, yeah, go for it. And every other business in there was like, yeah, it's great to see people sitting out there. It's a parking lot. We'll make it look nicer next summer, but that was definitely something that we are going to continue to do. And music is very important for the restaurants for us. We're definitely going to bring back the music series in Waitsfield and do it more in the other restaurants also. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of things that we're going to continue to do, which we haven't done in the past.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jason. Jenna, just curious, as if things go back to normal, assuming they will at some point, do you see the WOW initiative continue?
We want to keep it going as long as there is interest to support it. So, we're planning on working through the ski season and seeing how it goes and where we're at come mud season. I think we'll probably shut it down for at least a couple weeks, as most restaurants shut down for a couple weeks in the spring here, and regroup and decide at that point what we're going to do for the summer. I think a lot of people are more willing to drive themselves to pick up their takeout in the summertime. But I also, going back to the question about community support, people have been really into getting their food delivered. And it's been a month that we've been in business. And I would say that at least 50% of our customers are repeat customers. So those who are taking advantage of it really enjoy it and appreciate it. And, certainly as long as families are, taking on a lot more of schooling responsibilities and all of their schedules are changed, and it's difficult to also squeeze in that trip to the grocery store and cooking dinner and all of that. I think that relying on the restaurants for dinner and also for delivery is going to continue beyond the spring season. Hopefully when we all get back outside in the summertime and, restaurants are opening the patios and opening these outdoor spaces for dining, there'll be less of a need for takeout. And so maybe we'll just take a break until next winter. But I would say that we'll be delivering again winter for sure, whether or not we do it through the summer.
All right. Well, thanks, Jenna. Before we finish up, is there anything that anyone else wants to add or say?
I'd like to add that a silver lining for me personally is the takeout cocktails and just alcohol to go in general. I did call the DLC to see if we would be able to deliver alcohol, and that was a hard no. And they did tell me that as soon as the pandemic is over and the governor's emergency order is over, the DLC is going to shut down the takeout cocktails. So those of you who are enjoying that, like I am, take advantage of it while you can.
I'd also say, I think the whole piece of the convenience of timed, the whole online ordering platform and timed order pickups is really a convenience that I don't think should go overlooked after this whole thing blows over. Like we've all gotten used to it. It's a great thing, and I'd love to see that continue from that perspective. All the way around for sure.
Thanks. Just so folks know, that's TJ Greenwood, who's the operations manager at Lawson's, and you guys are doing an awful lot of good stuff there.
Yeah, we're trying. Our biggest piece through this whole thing was, to continue to be a draw for the Valley, for people to come in, even when the pandemic hit super hard, and also keeping all of our employees, in the game and working, and we all got to stick together here for sure.
Yep. Thanks, TJ.
I
Anybody
was,
else?
Eric, I was just on a seminar for the liquor board last week, and for the to-go cocktails, Jenna, that you were speaking of, there's a petition going around about keeping that instead of getting rid of it. So
I know some places have said they're not going to get rid of it. It's going to stay forever.
yeah.
Just so you're aware, I've gotten been speaking with the folks at Mad River Distillers, and they've been very active in this effort. And I'm going to be sending out a communication on the restaurant channel with the Chamber as a restaurant channel to talk about that and to kind of build some support for that, because I think there is plenty of support for that.
Yeah, from what Erica Volk was the gentleman giving the seminar, and it was the annual liquor training, but we were all in a Zoom, and there was only about 7 of us, and that kind of went on a sidebar real quick about that keeping and what we need to do and spread the word. And he said there's a strong in favor of trying to keep it, and the liquor commissioner is in favor of it. They just need to work out the regulations and the rules, which is good to hear. So at least people are understanding what's helping our hospitality industry. Because if we don't have hospitality, lodging, catering venues, we don't really have Vermont. Like, this is what we do. Like, we're all about tourism. So it's part of making sure we're, still here. So
Yeah.
'cause we don't want to get it absorbed back to New York again.
So about that portion of the liquor licensing or the liquor being able to have to-go cocktails, the Vermont Chamber is heavily supporting that position. So if you are a Vermont Chamber member, or if you need a good reason to become a Vermont Chamber member, now is the time, because they are the ones championing that effort. And currently the petition includes continuing the sale of to-go alcoholic beverage with a sunset of over a year. So it may not be the ask right now is not necessarily forever. It could be once it gets into our legislators' hands. But it certainly is for much longer than it looks like it could be today. So if that's important to you, we'll make sure that we include you in the lobbying efforts.
Yes, and you can rest assured that the Mad River Valley Chamber works very closely with the Vermont Chamber, and we're all on board with that. So, yeah. Well, thank you. If there's anyone else that has any comments or any other questions, I'd like to kind of finish this up by saying that for me, the silver lining in this whole thing has been the way the various sectors have come together. The lodging community, I think has done it, in an incredible way. And it's been really heartening to see that. And I think the restaurants and the retail folks have come together in their own way as well. And we're trying to build that. That's one of the things that we're trying to do at the Chamber, is try to build that camaraderie and that kind of esprit de corps to work together to build this community. And I really appreciate the restaurant folks coming together to do this. I miss you guys and seeing all of you so much, so hopefully we'll see you soon. And thanks everyone for participating, and thanks for all your Chamber membership that makes this all possible. And we'll see you at the bar at some point, right?
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric, for putting this
All right.
together. We appreciate it.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.